Today, I would like to share with you a spontaneous awakening that happened to me on Wednesday, November 18th, 1998. But before I do that, I'll give you a bit of a background. Growing up, my parents believed that we didn't really need religion so long as we are good people. And when I was 15, we immigrated to Melbourne, Australia from Taiwan, and I started going to church with friends, and mainly for the social reasons, I think. But at the age of 18, I was baptized as a Seventh day Adventist. And at the age of 21, I experienced a miracle when I should have died, but this bunch of cars actually passed through me and my car. It's as if I went into a different dimension. Anyway, that's another story. At the age of 23, I left the church because I didn't really agree with some of the church doctrines. And in retrospect, that enabled me to start being honest with who I am. And at the age of 25, I came out as a gay man. And I guess I've always been searching for meaning and ways to be happy. And in 97, I guess I was just 97, just over 30 years of age. I started my conscious awakening in terms of doing personal development courses, and I started meditating, and I actually experienced chi, this energy in my body for the very first time. And so I went to many different teachers of various traditions. I guess I've learned from Buddhist teachers, Tibetan Buddhist lamas, Aboriginal elders, Native American elders, and Hindu gurus. And so I guess I was exploring. And by 98, I joined this particular organization. We were doing a year-long spiritual development program. There were roughly about 50 of us. So I had read lots and lots of spiritual books about, some of them talk about the unity consciousness experience, or oneness experience. And it was all great to see others' experiences, but guess I really wanted to feel it and experience it myself. So fast forward to November 98, I was inspired to contact this particular Tibetan Buddhist Lama, Lama Ganchen. He was based in Milan, Italy, but he came to Sydney, Australia I was already living in Sydney then. Um, he came to Sydney on a UN World Peace mission, and the organization I was involved with, a lot of volunteers were working on a concert, a benefits concert at Darling Harbour. For some reason, I wasn't really that inspired to join them, but the day before he arrived in Sydney, in my morning meditation, I was directed to contact him, and then within 2 days, I think, I found myself at the New South Wales State Parliament House, where there was an official welcoming of this Tibetan Buddhist Lama, Lama Ganchen. And it was really funny at the time. Everyone was representing an organization, whereas I was just there as me. A lot of people were intrigued why I ended up being there. As it happened, I realized there's this interesting connection between Lama Ganchen and myself. Even though we were meeting for the first time in this life, there's that instant recognition. Anyway, so 2 weeks later, I had been invited to this retreat he held with an Aboriginal elder, and had some really interesting experiences. And by the way, Lama Ganchen didn't really speak much English. He would speak in single words, and would try. It was interesting communicating with him, and yet the whole time I could just feel this really easy connection with him, which I hadn't experienced with a spiritual teacher before. And he invited me to go visit him one day when he was visiting his childhood friend, who's another Tibetan Buddhist Lama who was based in Sydney, out in Parramatta. And so when I turned up at the house, I remember Lama Ganchen's entourage, they were really surprised to see me turning up there because it wasn't a public event. Anyway, I ended up spending about 2 hours in a little room with these two Tibetan Lamas who were discussing Buddhist scriptures in Tibetan. Since I don't speak it, I just sat there, did my open eye meditation. And it was during that time I actually realized Lama Ganchen and I had shared a past life or parallel life together, hence that instant connection. So that was interesting. So afterwards, I caught a suburban train going from Parramatta back to Sydney. It's about half an hour's drive. I mean, it's half an hour's ride, and I was just in this really easy, breezy, content state of mind. So there were roughly about 20 passengers in my carriage. So I was just doing this thing, just coming into energetic alignment. It's like easy grounding. Actually, we can play with that now. Like I would just notice where my weight is. Right now, it's mostly on my bottom, a little bit on my feet. Taking deep breaths. And I'll just tune into my infinite self or higher self. I feel that goosebumps and tingling. And I'll do this with focusing on one passenger at a time. And from this place of connection and alignment, I will just repeat with a smile, may you be happy and well. May you be happy and well. Just in my mind. I wasn't saying that out loud as such. So I was just casually doing this. Well, I knew I had half an hour's ride ahead of me, so I was just casually doing that. So at one stage, the train was pulling into Strathfield Station, which is a large station. It's about halfway between Parramatta and the CBD or downtown Sydney. And I looked out. It was around 5:30 in the afternoon on this Wednesday, November 18th, 1998, as I mentioned earlier. So there were hundreds of people on the platform of all colors, men and women, of all ages. And then all of a sudden, I found myself flying towards these people on the platform and away from them simultaneously. I remember even thinking, whoa, what's happening? But no, I didn't have time to finish that thought. I just remember, what? In that moment, it was as if my consciousness was the surface of this fast expanding balloon. So therefore, I was that awareness that was fast expanding. So I was flying towards them and away from them at the same time. And all of a sudden, it felt like everything physical, like the carriage and the buildings and everything fell away. But it's not so much falling away. They disappeared, but it became me. And then I became all of these people on the platform. That feeling was just so serene and peaceful. It was like coming home. And I've described it as, I'm not sure whether you've seen an Aboriginal dot painting. So each one of us is a dot on that painting, but in that instant, I relaxed and remembered who I really am. I am the whole painting. So I was fast expanding out and I could just feel the simple truth. It was actually really simple as well. It was, on the one hand, amazing and profound, and yet on the other hand, it's like, well, of course this is who I am. It's so natural. There was nothing but this brilliant white light. and yet it's so gentle and soft and loving on my eye. And there's nothing but this beautiful silence. And I felt like I was there for an eternity because I expanded out to be the whole universe or multiverses, whatever you call that. And yeah, I just felt like I was in this state of oneness, at unity with all, including inanimate objects. Everything is consciousness. Everything is me. Yeah. So that just came out of a blue. And so I felt like I was that brilliant white light as all, as consciousness for eternity. And yet, at the same time, it felt like seconds. Then I was back in my seat on the train. As I mentioned, I had read about mystics, unity consciousness experiences before this, but there's nothing like that visceral knowing, that remembering. So after that experience, I found myself not being interested in discussing or philosophizing anymore. It's like, okay, now I know, I've remembered. So remember I mentioned I was on this spiritual development program. It just so happened, and so that was Wednesday. On that weekend, we had a long weekend retreat, and in that, sitting in that big circle, I think there were probably about 45 of us that weekend, and I shared this experience with them, and a lot of people came up to me afterwards saying that they experienced me like a little Buddha on that retreat, because for about 2 weeks after that experience, I felt like I was floating around, I was gliding along, I was levitating. Nothing bothered me because now I remember who I really am. And yeah, so that was just over 20 years ago. It's pretty incredible to think that happened to me. At the time, I actually thought, okay, so now I've experienced this awakening, my life was going to be peachy and easy from now on. And then little did I know, a year later, I actually came out of a five and a half year relationship or marriage. And I felt so devastated, and I actually went through the dark night of the soul experience at the end of 99. So, but ever since then, about moving through that darkness, I felt like I was floating up to closer to who I am, and coming through that experience. I can honestly say, I remember even back in 2005 or so, I started noticing since 2003, every year had been the best year of my life. And so that's like 15 years. I could honestly say 15, 16 years. Every year I felt lighter and freer. So coming back to that, so I guess I'm just saying, it was really cute at the time when when I had experienced this spontaneous awakening, remembering who I am. I really thought somehow everything was going to be easy, and yet there was a lot of I don't know, emotional patterns and conditioning that was within this physical body. It's not who I truly am, but right now I'm who I truly am. My consciousness is experiencing this three-dimensional reality through this particular John Way Wang body. There's so much love that a lot of these limiting beliefs and energy patterns that were ready to be embraced and dissolved back into love. So yeah, it's been a interesting journey. I guess another thing I wanted to just briefly mention is that I noticed as a teenager and also young adult, I I didn't share the fear of death or the fear of aging with most of my friends. Like I used to find it interesting when people talk about these things, and to me, I don't know whether I knew, but well, especially after this experience in '98, I just know for sure that we are pure consciousness that's eternal, and yeah, it also reminded me when I was going through those few years when I was going to the Seventh Day Adventist Church. One thing, there were many things I used to question. One of the things I couldn't relate to was the promise of eternal life and in heaven. And, and I just, looking back now, it's interesting because well, I guess as a teenager and as a young adult, I just didn't find it much of an incentive to be promised eternal life and how amazing heaven is. And if I were to follow these rules, I would be promised this eternal life. And yeah, because I guess a part of me knew that's who we all are. There's nothing we really need to do, or yeah, that whole idea of keeping to certain rules, so I can be good enough to qualify to go to heaven. Especially when I found out. I guess most denominations of Christianity or different religions, they truly believe that they are the true, they have the truth. And yeah, so I guess as a 23-year-old, it didn't really sit well with me that that particular branch of Christianity had the only true answer, and I know most denominations believe that too, and so but it was interesting looking back this whole journey, and when I've always been oh, by the way, I'm trained as a structural engineer or civil engineer, so I was always very rational about my experiences in my early 20s and all. I never believed chi or energy or spirit were that real. I mean, being of Chinese heritage, I had always heard about the concept of chi as energy, but I just thought that's something from the past that was a metaphor until I experienced energy within my body. So anyway, I'm rambling on a little bit. I guess I just wanted to share with those of you who haven't heard about my experience. That's what happened to me back in '98. And yeah, so that's just coming to this moment together again. I usually talk about ground, breathe, relax, soften, and now I add another step to smile. So by grounding right now in this moment, since I'm not outside, I couldn't be barefoot on the grass or in the sand. I'll just notice where my weight is, mostly on my bottom, and a little bit on my feet. There's that relaxing, that surrendering, letting go. Just notice how there's nothing we need to do to feel that support, to have our weight held by Mother Earth. It's taking a deep breath all the way into our perineum together, our base, that little space down there. I love sighing, the sound of ah. they've done experiment to find that the sound of ah has the quality to dissolve contraction in our body. That's why when we sigh, we naturally go ah, and we relax. Ah, the best way to relax is to stretch and yawn. I said, let's do a fake yawn and stretch. Yeah, there's so many benefits to yawning. That's why in a circle, when you're with people, yawning and laughing are contagious. So is crying as well. So these are all good things that our intelligent bodies know to respond, to join in on. So let's shrug our shoulders. Our shoulders and neck is where a lot of us hold. I haven't been noticing. Hi, Chris, because I'm doing this on my phone. I can't really see the little whoever's there. Thank you for joining me. Okay, let's continue. So let's just roll our shoulders, relaxing the tension in our shoulders. Next, we notice our central diaphragm. That's where a lot of us hold as well. And moving down our body, our abdomen. Just making sure we're not tensing up there. A lot of us try not to feel our feelings, so we tense up our abdominal area. And then moving down to our pelvis and our base. Including just paying attention to your genitals and our anus. All those areas, making sure your sphincter muscles are not too tense. Just breathing in all the way down there to relax. And next we soften. So it's more of an internal falling in, melting, dripping. Just come into this moment together. And let's see if we can smile from our navel. Or maybe you can smile from your anus. Or maybe you could smile from your left nipple. There's nothing serious going on here. It's just us being in this moment together. So, as some of you know, I'm an inner guidance coach. I've always felt this passion to find that guidance within myself. And so in my inner guidance coaching, I hold this space. Basically, I'm being present and just allowing the person I'm working with to find their own truth, to find their guidance from within themselves. So it's been fun talking with you today. Hope you have a beautiful day, and go out there and see how many different body parts you can smile from, and experience this beautiful day as if it's your first and your last on the planet. Be happy and well.